Yeah, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all attendees. We welcome you to this session. We'll just start in a minute or so to allow other participants to join. Thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all of you from wherever you're joining us. We have a very exciting session and topic uh, scheduled today. The session is going to look at how countries can address address and accelerate the transition to low cost and low emission power systems and the role of power system operators in the same. Before we get into the session, we'll have further details. We'll just go through the housekeeping rules and also the session agenda. Yeah. So for the housekeeping rules, quickly, we would request all attendees and speakers to keep your mics and also your mobiles on silent mode. This session will be in English. Interpretation is available in Bahasa. Uh, and all participants are encouraged to send in your questions through the Q&A option or the chat box, and also it would be great if you can direct your questions to one of our speakers. Also in the Q&A session, we would also like to see you can raise your hands also using the raise your hand icon, and we can then enable you to speak, to unmute you and speak, either to share your inputs or your questions. For the speakers, you are requested to to mute your mics. We also encourage speakers to turn on your video when you're speaking. Lastly, if you're joining from the VOA platform, as per these instructions, you can anyway add the session. This particular session is A1. You can add it in your agenda and you can click view the session to attend. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so today's session looks at global power sector transformation and the role of system operators in this transition to clean energy. This is a 1-hour session. We will initially have an introduction by Ms. Barbara O'Neill, who's with NREL, and she works in the consortium. This will be followed by a case study presentation by PLN, by Mr. Isnandar from PLN Indonesia, who will talk about some of the pioneering work that they've done with the consortium. Following this, we'll have open discussion and Q&A where you'll get opportunities to ask questions and also suggest your inputs. And we'll close within the hour. Next slide, please. Yeah, before I introduce Barbara, just a brief about some of the work that the consortium has done. So NREL is the Interim Secretariat for the Global Power Sector Transformation, and NREL is leading the work on the Pillar 2, providing support to emerging countries and developing emerging economies and developing countries. And PLN and G-PST have also been collaborating for about a year and focusing on integrating technical requirements for integration of variable renewable energy into PLN's refurbishment for its Java Bali Control Center. They've also been engaging in knowledge sharing through a webinar series for PLN system operators, the technical staff particularly. Yeah, coming to Barbara. So Barbara is the grid integration manager at NREL. She is a representative for the Global Power Sector Transformation Consortium. She leads projects and she engages with stakeholders to deliver information on renewable energy integration practices, policies, technologies, and regulations. She has worked with a number of countries on these topics, including Tunisia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Guyana, Vietnam, and other countries in the Asia and in the South American region as well. Yeah, with this introduction, over to you, Barbara, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Good day to everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me here. I'm interested to hear from all these participants and what experience they're having in their own countries with respect to the integration of renewable energy and more specifically, variable renewable energy. I'm going to ask the moderator to give me a 5-minute warning when it's 5 minutes left of my time, because I unfortunately didn't wear a watch and my phone is up with my son doing a little child sleep story. So I can't have, usually my phone's right here, so I don't have a clock right in front of me. Let me go ahead and share my screen and get started on this presentation. I think this is the right one. Okay. Okay, so I am going to talk about this consortium that we have put together called the Global Power Sector Transformation. It's pretty amazing. It's been going now for about a year. Some of you may have heard about it, but I'm here to give you an update if you already know of it, or to introduce it if you have not. How can I make it? It's not forwarding. Okay, did it forward for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. So here are some of the members. We have some system operators who are what we call our founding system operators. And I'll point to them, National Grid from the UK up in the left, and Australia is an energy market operator. We also have ERCOT, which is the Texas operator in the US, and the California ISO. EnergyNet is the system operator out of Denmark, and we also have Eirgrid out of Ireland. So those are what we call our founding system operators, and we also have a core set of members who comprise many research institutions and other organizations who are forwarding the cause of renewable energy. So I'm going to give you an overview here. So we, and I can give you some sort of personal attestation to the need for something like the G-PST, because I've been working in the international space in the developing world to help sort of be a translator, if you will, between the utilities and their concerns and the regulators and the Ministry of Energy staff and, you know, ultimately the policymakers, sometimes Office of the President or any specific committee or council they have. And I hear countries who are very ambitious with their renewable energy targets, but then they get to the system operator and they say, we can't do it. We don't have a stable enough power system right now. We don't have good power quality. We don't have the luxury of introducing inverter-based resources like the Western countries do, you know, sort of the richer countries. And we have to say, well, yeah, that makes sense from maybe 15 years ago. But the capabilities now of these resources are much different. And the price has gone down, of course. And we have these leaders that have gone ahead of us and integrated higher levels of variable renewable generation. And we can learn from them. We can learn how they are procuring flexibility for their own systems. So we wanted to come together with a consortium of the founding system operators, as well as those technical institutes, and then kind of reach out to the developing country system operators and make sure that we understand, you know, what will be created for these operators in terms of knowledge transfer. So, oh, sorry, I'm accidentally moving the. All right, let me move the faces so I can see the whole screen. So the challenges that we see are, of course, that perception of high cost, the lack of the institutional support. So there's you know, the technical challenges, and then there's the institutional challenges. And by that I mean maybe you need a market, say, for ancillary services to provide those grid services that might have been traditionally procured from the incumbent generators or the utility-owned thermal generators on the system. So something like institutional or you know, the policies, the regulations, that sort of thing, the tariffs, you know, the challenges, the vested interests that utilities have, right? In some countries, they have some ownership of these assets that they don't want to strand. They don't want stranded costs. What do we do with all the coal capacity that we've either built or that we've signed, you know, long-term purchase power agreements for, and they have minimum capacity factors or must-take requirements, or, okay, technical challenges, low inertia. What will we do if we don't have these sort of synchronous devices attached to our power system? Cross-sector coordination. There's these newfangled things like, oh, what happens if you get cars acting as batteries, and you can kind of aggregate them and have them push power back to the grid, or what happens if we want to integrate buildings into the power sector and into the transport sector? Like, it's so complex, right? What do we do? And what about storage? How do we create the ability to smooth out the delivery of power diurnally, meaning during the day, solar day, extended, et cetera, and then also, of course, seasonally. And then what about this, like, how is it connected to the wholesale market? Do you have to have a market in order to have, you know, this new renewables? So we have thought, well, let's have these system operators talk to other system operators who have really forged the way and provide some solutions that they've employed to get through some of these challenges. So, for example, if you take planning for transmission, you can sort of coordinate that and integrate that into your operations. So you want to, you know, bring in your stakeholders, give people a voice, and when you expand your transmission, you can access some of these diverse resources that exist geographically distant from the load. And then once you do that, you want to make sure that it's clear and transparent as far as the rules for engagement and the rules for providing not just energy, but system flexibility or even capacity if that is what is necessary, because you don't have enough variable renewables to sort of smooth out the delivery based on where these are located, which, trust me, eventually you will. You know, the more you get and the diverse the geography becomes, the easier it is really to integrate renewables. But with all of this, we want to improve the system operator's ability to pool this variable renewable energy into their system and integrate it. So this is the challenge that we're seeing in the power system transformation all over the world. Now we see, again, I mentioned there's targets, there's legislative objective, there's some regulatory solutions that might have been pushed forth, like say a feed-in tariff for behind the meter generation, solar, rooftop solar, or you know, someone proposes a market solution. But what we have found is that it wasn't really transferring to these technical solutions. So by creating the G-PST, the Global Power Sector Transformation Consortium, we really want to reach the system operators and make sure that their ability to integrate renewables works with reinforcing the market solutions and the political solutions that we're also seeing in these countries. Like, let's have the parties sort of work together. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So, you know, why work with system operators? Now, they're the ones, that's kind of where the buck stops, right? We say the buck stops here. The buck stops with the system operator, who is responsible for providing power that is reliable. That's the main thing, right? Reliable power, economic power, stable power, resilient power, all of these things. They're the ones who have to implement the transformation. So we need to have them get confidence in the ability to increase the clean energy on their system, and then, you know, not push back on the policymakers, but instead say, okay, we can work with this. Maybe we need some help doing it. We need some assistance. We need to talk to, for example, another system operator who has done this ahead of us, but we can do it. And with that, we can attract private investment. And many of these countries are looking for some either domestic private sector investment, for example, domestic wind and solar project developers, or foreign direct investment, depending on how far along they are. So the private investment has to be confident that the power they're going to deliver to the system is really going to make it to the end user, and that it's clear what the procedures are for getting interconnected, what the procedures are for operating on the system, what those sort of standards are that they have to abide by when they're speccing out the inverters for their solar power plant, or the wind turbines, and what kind of, you know, features they need to ask for from the manufacturer. So we'll get these system operators to become a bit inspired, really, by the other system operators that they'll talk to, if we can kind of create a peer-to-peer knowledge exchange and allow them to have a bigger role. So in general, this theory of change that we're seeing is, let's go ahead and take, I mentioned all the founding system operators, which are in that bottom circle, and then the core members, which are, you know, National Renewable Energy Laboratory. So we're US government sort of research and development institution. EPRI, again, you know, US based, but really global with many utility members. And then you've got, you know, CSIR in South Africa. You've got CSIRO in Australia. You have VTT up in Finland, Fraunhofer in Germany, DTU in Denmark, Oladi in Latin America. You know, big institutions that have made such amazing strides in the research of these clean energy technologies. So now let's go ahead and add, in addition to exchanging the priorities for the research from the system operators that are ahead in terms of their level of integration, get the research priorities to the research institutions, and also let's go ahead and add the support down to the system operators. These are examples, but developing country system operators around the world. And let's, you know, call on countries, let's call on governments in Europe, US government, you know, foundations, let's call on some big money to help fund this. Like, let's, say, this is where the rubber meets the road. That's the, the phrase we have, like, this is where the rubber meets the road, where you have to really get the integration of that generation to make the power able to be used by end users, right? To not have it curtailed unless there's some appropriate curtailment, fine, but to not negatively impact the system, the voltage or the frequency or system harmonics or oscillations or subsynchronous resonance, et cetera. Like, you want to make sure that it works well for the system. So the output of this consortium is going to be these innovations and sharing tools and knowledge, and then making sure that these technology solutions are customized for local conditions. So, for example, IEEE, so that's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, worldwide organization that has many standards. But standards are not, they can't just be blanket applied across the board to every country, every system. Some of them need to be modified to make sense for the local conditions. So let's make sure that the developing system operators are not feeling like it doesn't apply to me. They don't know my system. We don't have the luxury of employing those standards to help renewables. Instead, let's work with them and figure out how to kind of create a local solution. So that's the idea. And these are the outcomes. And then, of course, the impacts will be what we talked about already as far as private investment. I'm sorry? As well as significant emissions reductions for the power sector. And of course, jobs and economic development. We have a whole pillar devoted to that. So this is the ecosystem of collaborators when we add not just the core team, but we add the International Energy Agency, USAID, Inter-American Development Bank. I mean, just, picking out a couple all over. World Bank's ESMAP organization, IRENA, all of these organizations are partnering with us in this effort. So what we've done is we've designed 5 pillars. So the research and peer learning is pillar number 1. And I'm going to go over these in a bit more detail, but that's where we really prioritize what areas of research need to be undertaken by these institutes. Pillar number 2 is specific technical assistance, sort of country by country TA. And as part of pillar number 2, we have what fellowships. And of course, we launched this right in the middle, right in advance of a pandemic, which is sort of limiting that vision that we had. But we will ultimately do it virtually if we can't do it in person. But the idea is to take, say, and this is an example, it could work many different ways, 2 or 3 staff people from a developing country system operator and have them go and sit at one of those founding system operators' control rooms or in their offices for 2 or 3 months, and really get a feel for how it works at IRGrid, ERCOT, California ISO, EnergyNet, National Grid, or Australia's EMO. And then maybe that's 2 or 3 months, and then say they go to NREL or VTT or Fraunhofer, one of these organizations, for say a week or 2 weeks at the tail end. And during that time, they come up with a plan of how they're going to integrate what they learned when they were doing a staff exchange, when they were working for the other system operator, into their system. In the meantime, they will have developed relationships, and that's really important going forward to be able to do a reach back and ask questions down the road. Pillar number 3, foundational workforce development. We'll go into this more, but that's, providing graduates from universities the knowledge and the tools to walk into those system operators, understanding the latest and greatest. 4 has to do with the standards that we mentioned earlier and localizing them. 5 has to do with open data and tools, so coming up with sort of a best-in-class set of models or data sources or tools that we can kind of agree on and have, say, a repository to direct folks to look for these open source tools. I'll go into a little bit more detail. The logo for each one is who's leading that pillar, but ultimately we're all working together. The funding model, we're going to the different governments, as I mentioned, and foundations, et cetera, and then the funding sort of just works bilaterally. There's not a legal entity that can receive a check called G-PST. G-PST is really a consortium, so the funding moves bilaterally. NREL is the current secretariat, like we're the original secretariat, but we'll be passing that role on at some point. We're just trying to, so we'll push subcontracts out to some of the other organizations if we get funding, but much of the funding also will come to one of the members, and they might sub something out to us. It just varies. Okay, pillars. I'm going to try to go through these fast. I don't know how much time I have left. Does somebody want to give me a time check? How many minutes I have left? Nikhil?
Yeah, sorry, Barbara, I dropped off. You have about 3 minutes left. Sorry, I dropped
off.
Oh,
quick. Okay. Well, and I can pass the slides around in terms of a PDF so people can read through this because I only have 3 minutes. But pillar 1, we talked about, this is sort of for the research priorities. So what we came up with has to do with inverter design, some stability tools and methods, control room of the future. We're working with PLN and Indonesia on that. I'm sure you'll hear a bit about it. Planning, new approaches for really creating reliable systems, restoration and black start. So when you do have a system-wide outage, how do you pull you have no synchronous, let's say you have very little synchronous resources, like what kind of resources do you need to restore the system? Is it battery power? How do we kind of get that frequency set? And then what other services are needed? What are the grid services in a high inverter-based system? So we've identified the priorities, and we're going for some big funding to help the members of the consortium prioritize that, getting that to the next technical level. Pillar 2, okay, I think this is not in order. Pillar 2 is where we do technical assistance to specific countries. There's more countries in this list. An example is the Java Bali control room upgrade, but we have a speaker from PLN, so we're going to kind of skip over that. Another example, well, I talked about the fellowship already. I'm trying to race through some of this. Another example is South Africa. So for South Africa, we are doing this real-time inertia estimation, as well as working on contingency analysis for them as a couple of specific areas that we're kind of diving into. And what we do with all of this is a lot of capacity building, where we don't want to do a report. We're not consultant. We don't want to do a report and hand it over and walk away. We want the staff of the system operator to do the modeling, do the analysis. We want to advise on it. We want to work on it with them. If we develop a tool, we're passing it over. It's an open source tool. We want to empower the system operators. For workforce development, it has to do with upskilling the existing workforce, as well as changing the curriculum of local universities in these countries. So in the developing countries, we want to say, here's a suggested curriculum that will bring you the lessons for the new power grid, for the new sources of clean energy. Here's how we can help you get that education so that folks can get out of the universities and go straight into the system operators with that knowledge already. And so, yes, we're establishing, we have a whole sort of set of categories of learning, and we're also developing some training that universities are welcome to use. And all of this is free. All these resources free, all the webinars we do, everything. It's like we want to share this. The idea is to share this with everything, with everyone. Sorry. For 4, that localized technology adoption, working very closely with IEEE, and we can figure out, how to take those standards, the testing, the certification of inverters, of panels, et cetera, and really make them work for the countries. And then for pillar 5, we're going to, come up with sort of a list of of good tools, but we want to encourage open source tools. And there are many system operators that resist that, but the universities are very good at employing open source tools. So we want to kind of bring the meeting of the minds between the universities and the system operators. Here's an example in Vietnam that we're doing on system inertia. It's a bit technical. I don't think we're going to dive into that. And here's an example of a list, like a repository of open source tools. Okay, and I think that that's good. I think it's time for me to stop. So I look forward to having some questions later on after. Well, I think we're going to wait, right, and do a Q&A after, is Nandar.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Barbara, and great to hear about some of the work that the consortium is doing and the support in reaching out to the power system operators. Yeah, we'll just jump in right to the next one. So we have a second speaker, Mr. Suruso Isnandar. He's a general manager for Java Bali Grid Dispatching Center of PLN Indonesia, which is the state electricity company in the country. He has a keen interest in promoting the transition from fossil-based fuel to low-energy systems in Indonesia, and he's been collaborating with several multilateral organizations on the same. Yeah, we look forward to hearing about the exciting work that PLN has done. Over to you, Mr. Isnandar.
Thank you, Nikhil, for the time. I will share the point. Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all the audience of this morning, this sessions. I would like to talk about the PLN renewable energy integration plans and also challenges. And as mentioned by Barbara, previous speaker, that PLN has been receiving assistance from Global PST Consortium. We have been doing knowledge sharings, and also we asked some experts from the Global PST to supervise us when we are trying to procure our new control center in Java Bali Grid. This morning I will talk about more regarding the renewable energy integration plan of Indonesia. So my presentation will be structured into four parts. The first one is the renewable energy development plan in Indonesia, and then we are looking at our case study, renewable implementation in Sulawesi Grid, as Indonesia consists of islands, and at the moment Sulawesi Grid has been receiving more than 10% from its peak load of variable renewable energy in terms of 140 megawatt wind farm and also solar farm. And then the management plan in Java Madura Bali Grid, this is the biggest grid in Indonesia, and starting next year we will have 150 megawatt of floating solar PV join the grid. The government has stipulated a mandatory regulation that by 2025 the energy portion from clean energy must reach 23%. And at the moment in Indonesia, we have a total installed capacity of 63 gigawatt, and currently the renewable energy capacity mostly from geothermal and also hydro reaching 7.9 gigawatt. In terms of the mix, the energy mix, this renewable energy accounted for 13.02% from the total. And the target for 2025, we will install 74 gigawatt total, with renewable energy capacity reaching 17 gigawatt, which is consists of the below description, and the energy mix from the renewable energy reaching 23%. The generation expansion plan of Indonesia electricity system, which actually not consists of one interconnected grid, but 7 large interconnected grid and around 300 small and medium grid, because Indonesia is an archipelagic country. We have 1,000 of islands need to be electrified. But from this generation expansion plan, from the existing capacity of 63 gigawatt, on the next 10 years, we will add 38.2 gigawatt new power plant, which is 50% of it consists of renewable energy. from hydro, geothermal, other kind of renewable energy such as wind and also solar. And hopefully by 2030, we will have 98.2 gigawatt new install capacity. And the additional capacity of the renewable energy consists of 16.9 gigawatt, consists of hydro 9 gigawatt, new geothermal 2.4 gigawatt, and other renewable energy 4.5 gigawatt. And about 1 gigawatt of it, actually, we're trying the introducing biomass into our existing coal-fired fleet using co-firing technology in order to achieve more credit on the renewable. Talking about the potential of renewable energy, we have abundant resources scattered across the country, from the island of Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Maluku, Papua, or Nusa Tenggara. We have a potential of geothermal around 484 megawatt. The hydro potential, we have 5.2 gigawatt. Solar and wind around 3.3 gigawatt, and biomass is 14 gigawatt. Meanwhile, on the Java Bali grid, where I reside at the moment, we have this potential 230 megawatt and also 1 gigawatt hydro and nearly 1 gigawatt wind farm. And also we have aspiration that at the moment PLN is among the first 6 ASEAN electricity utility to commit a net zero energy system by 2060. And our CEO has declared that the PLN decarbonization commitment consists of first, we need to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2060, and from next year we will not build a new coal-fired power plant. So at the moment there are still some new coal-fired power plant under construction, mostly from IPP, and we stopped that new development after 2022. So the latest coal-fired power plant, which is commissioned in 2026, hopefully it will retire by 2056. Therefore, we're trying to achieve the zero or low carbon energy system by 2060. And of course, our first step is increasing 23% renewable mix by 2025, and our last exit from coal-fired plant is by 2056. From now into 2026, the energy size of electricity will increase. At the moment, we have 300 terawatt hour, and it is predicted will be reaching 1,800 terawatt hours by 2060. That means we are talking about 1,500 terawatt gap, which we need to fill with new energy sources. It could be a combination of many things, but we have aspiration that we need to fill in this 1,500 terawatt gap for the next 40 years from the renewable energy. And this is our timeline of coal-fired retirement from 2020 to 2026, which divided into several stages. For example, the first one, retirement of subcritical coal-fired 1 gigawatt by 2030. Stage 2, the subcritical by 9 gigawatt 2035, and also supercritical coal plant 10 gigawatt by 2050, and etc. Of course, as a system operator, we need to keep up to date in order to anticipate this change, and therefore from nowadays we're trying to increase our portfolio and acquiring new technology in order to prepare ourselves for the new, more renewable energy integration into the grid. And this is just at a glance from the long-term planning that if you can see from the composition of coal site at the moment 68%, and we are hoping it will be phased out completely and changed by renewable energy, the green one, from 7% into a 53% plus 14% in the future. Right. If we are looking at one case where we are dealing the variable renewable energy, we have Sulawesi system, which is consists of the southern Sulawesi system and northern Sulawesi system. The southern grid have a capacity of 2.3 gigawatt with the peak load 1.3 gigawatt, and we have two wind farm over here, in total 140 megawatt. So we are talking about 10% from the peak load, and this is our learning ground for how to handle the variable renewable energy as the system, because this is a new experience for us. Including on the northern side, we have 620 megawatt system, and over here we have around 40 megawatt solar farm, and also we're trying to learn a lot from how to anticipating this variable and intermittent renewable energy, either on the south side or the North Sulawesi. And this is the location of the renewable energy plant in Sulawesi. As I said, that on the south side we have wind farm 70 megawatt located in the place named Sidra, and also Tolo 60, actually 70 megawatt on the southern tip, and also PV plant. Meanwhile, on the north side we have the solar plant. Of course, the challenges of the VRE integration into the grid is one thing. Intermittency on both sides, either on demand, on generation. And as a grid operator, as a system operator, conventional one, we have used to with everything can be dispatched, everything can be predicted, and now we have to prepare for this new disruption. Therefore, learning from the peer, as Barbara said, from the global PST, is a very valuable step in order to preparing ourselves for the future. In terms of the VRE penetration, we look at yes?
Mr. Iskander, you have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, 3 minutes, thank you. So we'll have the VRE forecast accuracy and also output variability. And on the system operation flexibility, we have a challenge of the load forecast accuracy, load variability, and also the activation of power plant governance fee and also AGC, including, this is very important, the revision of grid code and also the implementation of grid code. And this is one of the challenges we have, where we have to increase the forecast accuracy of the weather and how to mitigate the output variability from those wind farms. As we can see, this is the system frequency, and this is the pattern daily on how the wind farm are going up and going down, and also the ramping, which we need to mitigate. And this is the frequency spectrum before wind variable renewable energy production and after. And you can see that at the after we have more a wide range of frequency excursion, and this is something that we need to deal with and trying to put it back to previous condition, including load forecast accuracy and also variability. And of course, this is the step we are taking in order to mitigate those variability, and also including, for example, activation of the free governor and also activation of the weather forecast using many provider. And next step, of course, we would like to having the more new advanced control center that can basically conducting the online and real-time optimization. And this is the structure of the existing grid control system, and what we would like to achieve in the future. Hopefully, we will have the automatic dispatch system based on the SCADA, frequency control and defense scheme, and all including the online weather forecast and also system optimization and SCADA integration in order to deal with the high percentage of variable renewable energy. Similar story actually happening in Java, Bali. I will skip this, and the PDF version of this presentation will be available. And obviously, if there's any question further, I can be contacted later on. But basically, on the Java-Bali grid, at the moment, we do not have yet the variable renewable energy, but starting next year, we'll have 140 megawatt of floating PV, and from the proposal, we'll have around 6 gigawatt variable renewable energy against 27 gigawatt of peak load. And of course, this is the challenge as a system operator on how we have to deal with the variability and intermittency of VRE. On we are taking the mitigation, including what we have done so far, preparing our system, and also in order to make sure that the infrastructure are in place to accommodate those VRE, including the SCADA and also EMS readiness for VRE regulation. And at the moment, we are preparing a new control system, a new control center in order to accommodate this VRE. And at the moment, we are on the stage of procuring the project consultant. And thanks to G-PST, we have been receiving numerous assistants. We have been assisting the knowledge sharing. We have been assisting the consultation for the would-be vendor from the control center, and this is really great as we are moving toward end of 2023, where we will have a new control center in place, and including the improvement of wide area monitoring and protection control in Java Madura Bali system. And to conclude this presentation, basically that we have one grid which has a strong technological foundation to be a control center adapted to VRE. But of course, there are a lot of things to do in order to optimize the existing technology to fully support VRE integration into our system. Meanwhile, in Java Bali grid, we have prepared and embraced ourselves because at least 6 gigawatt or even more variable renewable energy will come into the system within the next couple of years, and that's why we are preparing, including the construction of new advanced control center. And thanks to G-PST, we really appreciate that, as been assisting PLN in the knowledge sharing, on the peer learning, on the technical consultation, in order to smoothly upgrade our control system into the new control center, which can be adopted variable renewable energy. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. I will welcome all questions if you have after this discussion. Thank you very much. I will return the time to Nikhil. Thank you, Nikhil.
Thank you, Mr. Isna, that was for sticking to your time. And yeah, it's really inspiring to see the various, particularly the ambition and various actions that PLN is taking in both the grids to integrate VRE, and also the great collaboration with the PST consortium. Right, so we'll jump in to the questions. We have a few questions coming in from participants. So maybe we'll take the first one. This possibly you can address, Barbara. So the question is from Mr. Conan Jones. What are the mechanisms, be it legal, regulatory, to assure the effectiveness of implementing clean energy transitions?
Sure. So, I mean, when we started in the US, I was working for a utility before I was working for NREL, and we saw a renewable portfolio standard that was something that our state government passed. So for the RPS, if we hadn't made that the targets that were set, then there was an less than optimal regulatory treatment. So in other words, the regulator here has to approve the rates that the utility sets in order to pay back the investments, right, for the power plants and their staff and all of that. So I worked for an investor-owned utility, so it was listed on the stock market, in other words. So the ramifications for not making the RPS was that we wouldn't have received favorable rate treatment because it was a condition that the state set. I know that it varies, right, depending on the structure of your energy sector, but legal ramifications it depends on who has the ultimate responsibility to meet a renewable target. Now, if it's, say, the end distributor, like a city or municipality or a local distribution company, if they have the ultimate responsibility to meet a certain percentage of renewable sales, say, to their customers, and they need to go, okay, back to the utility provider and say, we need to have X percentage come from renewables. And then the utility has to either build the renewables or go into purchase power agreements with independent power producer, with the private sector. And so then if the utility is responsible, like if it's on the generation side instead of on the end user side or the seller side, then the government could say, okay, we're going to withhold some funds from you. Now, an organization like PLN, I mean, it's a bit tough, right? Because they answer to the Ministry of Finance and Investment, right, of state-owned enterprises, I think, as well as their Ministry of Energy, and they also have, of course, the renewable energy piece of that ministry. So PLN is too big to fail. That's what we say, too big to fail, when the U.S. has to come in and support companies that are going to go out of business, like banks or Morgan Stanley's or these kinds of things. So for that, there has to be some ultimate consequence if they don't make the target. And we're seeing that, around the world, that if the utility is so big that they don't have any real stick, they might have a carrot, like, hey, if you make this target, we can provide some incentives to you, but they don't have like a real hammer on the backside, and that's difficult because sometimes you see these targets and they don't get met at all. I'd say the government can, switch the focus and try to figure out how to get renewables, say, in the transport sector, and push funding to a different sector if it's not being met. It's utility. So that's hard. Anyway, there's also, there's tariff things too. Like if you go into the regulatory aspects of tariffs, if you say, oh, we're not going to award your tariff, but again, the regulator of the country has to have enough power to be able to do that as far as a consequence.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. We have a couple of questions for Mr. Iskander. Firstly, if you could share the challenges in switching to multiple types of dynamic energy transitions. That's the first question. And the second question is, what measures are being taken to enhance energy efficiency on the generation side at PLN and in the country?
Thank you for the question. So for the first one about the challenge in switching to multiple type of dynamic energy transition, in the view of system operator, actually, as a system operator, a grid operator who are used to with the conventional thermal fleet of generation, we have one thing that we know the unknown factor, that all those generators can be dispatched at will in order to track the load. And once we moving into the new landscape where the variability and the flexibility and uncertainty is happening on both sides, either from the demand side and either from the generation side, then we got a huge challenge. At the moment, the uncertainty, I could say, mostly on the demand side, where it is the thing that you can well mitigate. But if you have those two combination of variability, either on the demand and also on the generation side, then we have to change the way we operate the system. That's the view from the system operator. But if we are looking at on the a bigger picture, in this case, is the security of supply of electricity in the country, for example, the transition into the new energy sources, cleaner energy sources, must be approached very carefully. For example, in Indonesia, whether we like it or not, the coal fire is the workhorse of Indonesia economy at the moment. We have 73% generation from the coal. And there's a pressure and also a program to move away from this coal into the new and cleaner energy sources. So we have to approach carefully in order not to sacrificing the reliability of electricity supply, because it will disrupt the economic development. So we have to look at on those bigger picture if we are looking at on the bigger side. But as Indonesian government and also PLN management has aspiration that we have to moving into the new energy landscape, which is much cleaner than we have now. So those steps are being implemented step by step by, as I said earlier, we are phasing out our coal-fired power plant little by little up to 2056. And hopefully by that time, we introducing new resources which can be not only complemented, but completely replace this conventional and thermal generation. So that's, I think, the key challenge depend on we view it either as the system operator or as the energy policy maker in the country. And the second question, I'm sorry, I lost about the second question. Ikhil, can you?
Yeah, that's on what's being done at PLN to enhance the energy efficiency at the generation side.
Right, yes. So at the moment, the energy efficiency measure we are doing in many ways. One thing, of course, we are trying to increase the efficiency of the existing fleet. Therefore, we are moving from the subcritical coal-fired power plant. We are moving into ultra supercritical coal-fired power plant, which has a higher efficiency and lower efficiency, lower emission as well. Not only that, we are also introducing the co-firing by maximizing the potential of biomass in Indonesia. And at the moment, our co-firing percentage is around 5%, and we'd like to increase this by 15%. By introducing co-firing into a generation site, it will improve the emission figure, and therefore it will help with the transition into a cleaner energy system. Not only that, of course, we are looking at new technology as well on how we are dealing with that. For example, at the moment, we are looking at the carbon capture and utilization technology, CCS, and storage, CCUS, in order to improve and also to sequestration the CO2 emission from the coal-fired power plant. So there are many ways that we can take in order to increase the energy efficiency in generation side. Hopefully, this can help the answer your question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to know some of the forward-looking interventions that you're taking. Maybe Barbara, the next question will come to you. So the question is on how do we, maybe based on your work with the consortium and various countries supporting various countries. So how do we better support and help finance the energy transition in developing nations? So maybe some insights from your engagement particularly.
Well, I mean, in my experience, there's a lot of finance. There's a lot of money coming from some of the development banks, the Asia Development Bank, the World Bank, USAID. I mean, they fund us to go into countries and really help provide the assistance, the knowledge, the capacity of the staff, sort of the know-how to help enable clean energy transitions. I mean, as far as the financing of the actual physical infrastructure on the project side, my recommendation is to do auctions, right? So do procurement via solicitation. So do a request for proposals or a tender for projects. And that way you only have to pay for energy. You don't have to pay for anything that is at risk. So when the solar power comes to you, you pay per megawatt hour. Same for wind power per megawatt hour. You don't have to worry about the risk, okay? Now, as far as helping to pay for and provide technical assistance to the system operator to be able to integrate more variable generation. Some of that infrastructure does take money. Our argument is that in the end, it's going to be a more economically efficient system to enhance flexibility and incentivize flexibility on your system. So not only are renewables changing, okay, but lots of traditional vertically integrated utility structures are moving to market. And then there's different end use changes, like the profile of the load, of the demand for electricity isn't the same as it used to be, because you have folks installing rooftop solar, so that will lower their demand for power from the utility. So you've got a change of net load shape. And then as you add electric vehicles to the power demand, that can cause, more demand, but at specific times of the day, unless you incorporate, say, time of use rates to be able to kind of shift that demand to where it most suits you. So, there's, as far as specific technical assistance, there are many ways to get help. And in the global power sector transformation, we have quite a bit of funding from various international organizations that we're willing to spend providing technical assistance to developing country system operators. All we need is their wanting to be engaged with us, to wanting to take the help. From there, we provide, say a staff fellowship, allow their staff to go study and work in some other country, or provide, help, provide some modeling help. We provide, workforce training, all of that. So that's the organization. The website is on there, globalpst.org. Sign up, get involved, join the committees. It's available.
Sure. Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, maybe just one last question, which we have from Mr. Isnandar. So in terms of the battery energy storage, is PLN considering that, application for your utility, for the grid?
Thank you for the question. Yes, indeed, we have identified the needs for introducing BESS-based battery energy storage system or large battery system into the system. Basically, this battery can be acting as a frequency regulation, or even for other ancillary services, as the same way offered by a pump storage power plant. At the moment in Java Bali Grid, we are building the pump storage power plant, 1 gigawatt, which is the function is for the system ancillary services such as frequency regulation. And in the future, if we are looking at the Indonesia market gap of 1,500 terawatt hour, which we need to fill with the renewable energy resources, one of the approach is on how we are introducing this variable renewable energy into the baseload renewable energy by coupled with the large storage or battery. To begin with, we have studied the need for battery energy storage system in Sulawesi, either in northern side or southern side, and also in Java Bali Grid. We are considering to install the large battery storage, which is around 50 megawatt and 100 megawatt hour, in order to equip the system with the coming variability from VRE. Yes, we are looking at those technology. We are still comparing and we are still assessing, and we haven't yet into deciding to invest on those battery storage, but we are looking at that way. And in that context, in that regard, we have been asking the member of Global PST to share the experience on the battery storage. For example, the California ISO has installed several battery, and we we are very keen to learn and to look at the way they experience with this large-scale battery system. At the end of the day, the decision on how to install the battery or not will be back purely into the investment decision. But yes, indeed, we are looking at the opportunity, the option to introduce battery energy storage system into the grid. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Since we are slightly over time, we again thank our speakers for the presentations and also for sharing their experiences and responding to questions. So we will, of course, definitely address questions which we have not post the webinar. We'll get back to you. Thank you again, Barbara, for the great work that the consortium is doing in terms of how existing generation can supplement variable renewable integration, provide various services, and also the work and the support, much needed support that you're providing system operators who are at the forefront to transform this action to the policy and process action to actual uptake on ground. And I think a key point also on the local customization that you mentioned of these approaches and solutions, that's critical. And to Mr. Isnandar also, it's great to see and really inspiring that PLN's commitment, especially for carbon neutrality and the phase out of coal power, thermal power plants that is planned, and you really have a specific timelines and plans in place, and also really great to hear various innovative technologies that you just mentioned, that PLN is deploying or looking to deploy. So thank you. We would just like to inform participants that all the materials and the slides will be shared with you post the webinar. We would also encourage you to, send in any additional questions that you have to us. We will pass these on to our speakers, and of course, we'll get back to you. We also would really welcome you to, reach out to the consortium as well, the PST consortium, as well as the AsiaList partnership for any peer learning, any technical assistance support on this topic. We'd be happy to even connect you to NREL and the consortium as well. Lastly, any best practices as well. If any of the participants from your utility or country, if you have to share, we'd be happy to receive that as well. And we would also encourage you to join the Grid Renewable Energy Community of Practice, under which this webinar is being arranged. And of course, also, if you want to get involved with the PST consortium, Barbara has provided the information to join. With that, thank you. I think we would request everyone who's attending, if possible, if you can turn on your video so we can take a group photo. And subsequently, once that is done, we also encourage you to fill out the survey form before you exit. So maybe can we have participants turn on all of us, if we can turn on our videos.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. So Sasi, did we get a lot of us?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you again for joining. And yeah, we apologize for the slight delay in terms of time. Thank you again for the great questions. And yeah, Barbara and Mr. Isnandar, again, thank you for sharing your experiences of the great work that you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Nikki.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Have a nice day. permission to leave.
Thank you. Bye-bye.